They had been screaming into the void for 4 months. Their signals traveled across the black emptiness of space, carrying the sounds of their dying world to anyone who might listen. But the galaxy had learned long ago that listening was dangerous. Listening meant responsibility, and responsibility meant war. On the distant moon of Prime, they watched their cities burn. They were a gentle species, with soft blue skin and large eyes that had evolved to see beauty in everything. For 3 generations, they had built their civilization on this small moon, creating gardens that floated in the air and music that could make even the coldest heart feel warm. They had never known war. They had never needed weapons. The Empire had noticed their world 6 months ago. They were conquerors, a species of tall, skinned warriors who believed that strength was the only law that mattered. They had looked at the and seen easy prey. They had looked at Prime and seen resources waiting to be taken. The invasion began without warning. Warships filled the sky like a plague of metal locusts. Their weapons turned beautiful cities into ash and rubble. They had no army, no fleet, no way to fight back. All they could do was run and hide and send their desperate signals into space, begging for anyone to help them. The Galactic Council received their messages first. This ancient organization claimed to protect peace and justice across the known universe. They held meetings. They discussed options. They expressed deep concern and profound sympathy. Then they declared the situation to be outside intervention parameters and moved on to other business. Other species received the signals too. Some felt genuine sadness for others simply shrugged and changed the frequency. A few even sent messages of support, promising thoughts and prayers while doing nothing at all. The galaxy had seen this story before. The strong devoured the weak. That was simply how things worked. On Earth, in a small monitoring station in Seoul, a young woman sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by screens filled with static and silence. She was a commander in the Korean Space Force, assigned to the boring duty of scanning deep space for signals. Most nights, she heard nothing but the empty whisper of distant stars. But tonight was different. The signal was weak, almost lost in the background noise of the universe. Had to clean it up, boost it, filter it through 3 different programs before she could hear it clearly. When she finally did, she felt her heart stop. It was a child's voice speaking in a language her computer struggled to translate. "Please help us. The bad ones are burning our homes. Mother says no one will come, but I believe someone will hear this. Please, we are scared. We are so scared." Sat in the darkness for a long time, listening to that voice play over and over again. The signal was old, nearly 4 months old by the time it reached Earth. She did not know if that child was still alive. She did not know if any of the still survived. But she knew with absolute certainty that she could not simply delete the file and go back to watching static. She took the recording to her superiors. They listened politely and told her it was not their concern. Humanity was new to space, they explained. Earth had only achieved interstellar travel 10 years ago. They were small, weak, unimportant in the grand scheme of galactic politics. Getting involved in alien conflicts would be foolish. It might even be suicidal. Did not argue with them. She simply nodded, left the meeting, and drove across the city to the home of a man named. Was old now, his hair white and his body bent with age. But his eyes were still sharp, still burning with the fire that had made him one of Korea's greatest generals. He had fought in the collapse wars when Earth itself had nearly been destroyed by conflict. He had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, what it meant to face extinction. Played the recording for him without saying a word. The old general listened in silence, his weathered hands folded in his lap. When the child's voice faded into static, he did not speak for several minutes. "How far away is this moon?" he finally asked. 3 weeks at maximum speed, answered. "But sir, our fleet is small. We have maybe 12 ships that could make the journey, and the reports say they have over 100. Nodded slowly. I remember when Japan invaded our homeland. I was just a boy then, but I remember the stories my grandmother told me. She said the whole world looked away. They said Korea was not their concern. They said getting involved would be too dangerous. He stood up, walking to the window to look out at the lights of Seoul stretching to the horizon. This city had been rebuilt 3 times in human history. Each time, someone had tried to destroy it. Each time, the Korean people had refused to stay dead. When I joined the military, continued, I swore an oath. I promised to protect those who could not protect themselves. That oath did not specify only humans. That oath did not draw lines on a map and say these lives matter but those lives do not. He turned back to, and she saw something fierce awakening in his old eyes. Those people are dying because no one will stand up for them. Their children are crying in the darkness because the galaxy has decided they are not worth saving. If we ignore their screams, what does that make us? Felt tears forming in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. It makes us no better than the ones who are killing them. Smiled a hard and determined smile that reminded why this man was a legend. 12 ships, you said, against 100. Yes, sir, maybe less. The old general walked to his desk and picked up a phone that connected him directly to the Global Defense Initiative. He had spent decades earning the respect and trust of the people on the other end of that line. He had never asked them for anything, until now. 12 ships will have to be enough, he said. Tell everyone who is willing to fight that we leave in 48 hours, and send a message to those aliens. Tell them help is coming. His heart was pounding as she left the general's home. She did not know if 12 ships could make any difference. She did not know if they would arrive in time to save anyone. She did not even know if she would survive the journey. But she knew deep in her soul that some things were worth dying for. And tonight, for the first time since humanity had reached the stars, Earth's warriors had decided to answer someone else's cry for help. The galaxy believed no one would come for them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The 12 ships of Earth dropped out of hyperspace like ghosts emerging from darkness. For a moment, everything was silent. The crews stared at their screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. Below them, the moon of Prime glowed with fire. Entire continents were burning. The smoke rose so thick that it formed clouds visible from orbit. Captain stood on the bridge of the destroyer, named after the white tiger of Korean legend. She was 34 years old, small in height but large in spirit. Her crew had followed her through training exercises and minor skirmishes, but none of them had ever seen real war. None of them had ever faced an enemy that wanted to kill them. Report, she said, her voice steady despite the cold fear growing in her stomach. Her sensor officer, a young man named, worked his controls with shaking hands. Counting approximately 112 enemy vessels in orbit, Captain, mostly heavy cruisers and assault carriers. They outgun us by a lot, ma'am. Nodded, she had expected this. Hopping for something different had been foolish, but she had hoped anyway. What about the surface? Ground forces have occupied most of the major population centers. The capital is destroyed. I'm detecting scattered groups of survivors hiding in the mountains and underground shelters, but paused, swallowing hard. The extinction protocols have already begun. They're systematically hunting down the remaining population. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what those words meant. They were not just conquering this world. They were erasing them from existence. Every man, woman, and child would be hunted down and killed. Their culture, their history, their songs and stories would be wiped away as if they had never existed. Looked at the faces of her crew. She saw fear there, but she also saw something else. She saw anger. She saw the same burning determination that had kept the Korean people alive through centuries of invasion and occupation. These were the descendants of warriors who had fought with wooden ships against steel fleets. They had never learned how to give up. Open a channel, ordered. All frequencies, all languages. I want every ship in this system to hear what I have to say. hesitated for only a moment before following the command. "Channel open, Captain." Straightened her uniform and spoke clearly into the communication system. "This is Captain of the Earth Defense Fleet commanding the destroyer. We have come a very long way to deliver a simple message. The people are now under the protection of Earth. You will stop your attacks immediately. You will withdraw from this system. You have 1 hour to comply." The response came quickly. A harsh, mocking voice filled the bridge, speaking in the guttural language that the computers translated into cold, mechanical words. "Earth, we do not know this world. Our records show humans as a primitive species, barely capable of leaving their own solar system. You have 12 ships against our fleet. Is this a joke?" Smiled, though there was no warmth in it. 12 ships today. But know this, Commander, for every ship you destroy, Earth will send 10 more. For every human you kill, 100 will rise to take their place. We are not like the species you have conquered before. We do not accept defeat. We do not forget. And we never, ever stop fighting. The commander laughed. It was a terrible sound, like stones grinding together. Brave words from a dead woman. In 1 hour, we will tear your little fleet apart and add Earth to our list of future conquests. Your species will make excellent slaves. The channel closed, stood motionless for a long moment, feeling the eyes of her crew upon her. She knew what she was asking them to do. She knew that many of them would not survive the coming battle, but she also knew that turning back was not an option. "Begin landing operations," she ordered. "Get our ground teams to the surface. Find the survivors and protect them. The space battle will be a distraction. Our real mission is down there." On the transport ship behind Sergeant Minu was already preparing his soldiers. There were 30 of them in total, volunteers who had chosen to be the first humans to fight on alien soil. They were young, mostly in their 20s, but they had trained hard and they believed in their mission. Minu gathered them in the cargo bay as the transport descended through the burning atmosphere. "Listen carefully," he said. "We are about to do something no human has ever done before. We are going to fight for people who are not our own. We are going to die for strangers." He paused, looking at each face in turn. There was the medic who had joined the military to save lives rather than take them. There was the youngest member of the squad, barely 20 years old, but one of the best shots Minu had ever seen. There were others, each with their own story, their own reasons for being here. "They cannot fight," Minu continued. "They have never known war. They do not know how to use weapons. They are gentle, peaceful creatures who only wanted to be left alone, and for that crime they have decided to erase them from history." He picked up his rifle and checked the charge. "We are here to teach the galaxy a lesson. We are here to show them that there are still people who will stand up for the weak. Win or lose, live or die, we will make them remember this day. We will make them remember what humans are capable of." An alarm sounded throughout the ship. They were entering the combat zone. In orbit, the hour had passed. The fleet began to move, their massive warships turning toward the tiny human vessels like wolves surrounding wounded deer. Captain watched them come on her tactical display, counting the seconds until contact. "All ships, this is," she broadcast to her small fleet. "Remember who you are, remember why we came. Attack pattern, make our ancestors proud." The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness of space like lightning across a stormy sky. Weapons reached out toward the human ships, expecting easy kills, expecting terror and retreat. Instead, they found 12 ships charging directly into their formation, weapons blazing, refusing to give ground. The humans were outnumbered and outmatched in every possible way. But they had something they had never encountered before. They had the fury of a species that had been fighting impossible odds since before they could write their own history. They had the madness of warriors who would rather die standing than live on their knees. The Battle of Prime had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when it took its first serious hit. The ship shook like a leaf in a storm, throwing crew members against walls and sending equipment crashing to the floor. Alarms screamed throughout every corridor. Smoke poured from damaged systems. Captain pulled herself back into her command chair, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "Damage report," she demanded, her voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, called out, his fingers flying across his console. "We've lost the forward missile batteries. Engine power down to 60%. Wiped the blood from her eyes and stared at the tactical display. 4 of her 12 ships were already gone, transformed into expanding clouds of debris drifting through the void. The others were all damaged, some barely holding together. But they had also destroyed 27 vessels, 27 kills against a fleet that had expected to lose none. The humans were fighting in ways they had never seen before. They used asteroids as shields, hiding behind the ancient rocks and striking from unexpected angles. When a ship was damaged beyond repair, its crew would aim it at the nearest enemy and accelerate, turning their dying vessel into a weapon. The commanders were growing frustrated and confused. These primitives refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. They refused to accept that they had already lost. "Enemy cruiser closing on our port side," warned. "It's big, Captain, really big." Studied the approaching ship on her screen. It was 3 times the size of the, bristling with weapons that could tear her vessel apart in seconds. A direct fight would be suicide. But then again, everything about this mission was suicide. "How much ammunition do we have left for the main guns?" she asked. 23 shots, ma'am. Maybe 24 if we push the systems." "Save them. We're going to try something different." She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes narrowing with calculation. "Engineering, vent atmosphere from all non-essential compartments. All hands, seal suits and prepare for zero gravity." Her officers exchanged confused looks, but they followed her orders without question. Within minutes, the released great clouds of gas into space, surrounding itself with a spreading mist of frozen particles. To enemy sensors, it would look like massive damage, like a dying ship bleeding out its last breath. The cruiser slowed its approach. Its captain, perhaps suspecting a trick, ordered his weapons ready but did not fire. He wanted to confirm the kill, to make sure this annoying little human ship was truly finished. That hesitation cost him everything. Now whispered, "Full power, ram them." The engines roared to life, pushing the ship forward at maximum acceleration. The captain had only seconds to realize his mistake before the human destroyer slammed into his cruiser's side, tearing through armor plating and detonating against the engine room. The explosion turned both ships into a single fireball of twisted metal and dying light. But they survived, barely. The impact had destroyed nearly half the ship, but the reinforced bridge section remained intact, tumbling through space with emergency power flickering. Coughed blood and checked her displays. Somehow, impossibly, they were still alive. On the surface of Prime, Sergeant Menu was fighting his own desperate battle. His 30 soldiers had become 22, then 15, then 8. They had landed in the ruins of the capital and found horrors beyond anything they had imagined. Buildings reduced to ash, bodies lying in the streets, families who had tried to flee and been cut down where they stood. The smell of death hung over everything like a poisonous fog. But they had also found survivors, hiding in basements and sewers, terrified creatures who had given up all hope until strange aliens with round eyes and pale skin had appeared with weapons and promises of protection. Menu's squad had set up a defensive position in what remained of a hospital. Around them huddled nearly 200 civilians, mostly women and children, their large eyes wet with tears of fear and confusion. They did not understand who these humans were. They did not understand why anyone would risk their lives for strangers, but they clung to the soldiers like drowning swimmers clinging to driftwood. "Patrol approaching from the east," reported, peering through the scope of his rifle. 15. No, 20 soldiers, heavy weapons. Minyu checked his own weapon. His squad had enough ammunition for maybe one more firefight. After that, they would be down to knives and fists. How many wounded can we move? The medic looked up from the child she was treating. Her uniform was covered in blood, some human, some the strange blue color of blood. Her hands shook with exhaustion, but her eyes remained focused. Maybe half. The others will die if we try to transport them. Then we don't move. Minyu made his decision instantly. We hold here. We hold until there's nothing left to hold with. They attacked with overwhelming force, expecting the small group of humans to break and run. Instead, they found soldiers who fought like demons possessed by fury. Minyu killed 3 enemies with his rifle, then 2 more with his pistol when the rifle ran dry, then 1 more with his combat knife when the pistol was knocked from his hand. Stayed with the wounded, shielding injured with her own body while returning fire with a weapon she had taken from a dead soldier. She was not trained for combat. She had joined the military to be a healer, not a killer. But in this moment, with children crying behind her and enemies closing in from all sides, she found a darkness within herself that she had never known existed. The battle lasted for over an hour. When it finally ended, 8 lay dead in the hospital ruins. The rest had retreated, unwilling to pay the price necessary to defeat these impossible humans. Minyu leaned against a crumbling wall, clutching the wound in his side that was trying to bandage. His squad was down to 8 survivors. Their ammunition was gone. Their strength was nearly exhausted. A commander broadcast a message across all frequencies, his voice echoing through the devastated city. Humans, you have fought well. We offer you an honorable death. Lay down your weapons and we will end your suffering quickly. Continue to resist, and we will make you watch as we kill every in your care, slowly and painfully. Minyu laughed, a wet and painful sound that bubbled up from his damaged lungs. He pressed the button on his communicator and responded in a voice that carried across the ruins. Let me tell you something about Koreans, he said. For thousands of years, stronger nations have tried to conquer us. They have burned our cities. They have killed our people. They have told us to surrender or die, and every single time we have chosen to fight, not because we thought we could win, but because there are some things more important than survival. He paused to spit blood onto the ground. We do not surrender, we never have, we never will. So come and take this hospital if you can. But know this, every step you take will cost you lives. And when you finally reach us, we will kill you with our bare hands if we have to. The night continued, long and dark and filled with fire. And in the ruins of a dead city, 8 human soldiers and 200 refugees held against an army, refusing to bend, refusing to break, refusing to accept that all hope was lost. Deep beneath the mountains of Prime, in caves that had been carved by ancient rivers long before they had built their first cities, elders sat in darkness and listened to the sounds of war above. He was the oldest living keeper of their traditions and spiritual guide to their people. For weeks, he had accepted that his species would die. He had prepared himself to join his ancestors in the great silence. But now, strange sounds echoed through the stone passages, explosions that were not weapons, voices speaking languages the translation devices struggled to understand, and most surprising of all, something he had not heard in months: hope. Elder, a young scout whispered, crawling into the chamber where waited. The stories are true. Aliens have come. Aliens from a world called Earth. They are fighting the... Raised his tired old head. How many ships did they bring? How large is their fleet? The scout hesitated. 12 ships, Elder, only 12. 12 felt confusion twist through his thoughts. Against the entire invasion force. That is not a rescue. That is suicide. I know, Elder, but they are not surrendering. They are not retreating. I watched from the observation post as one of their ships deliberately crashed into a cruiser 3 times its size. Both ships were destroyed, but the human vessel survived just enough to escape. They fight like nothing I have ever seen. was silent for a long moment. He thought about his people, hiding in caves and bunkers, waiting to die. He thought about the prayers they had sent into space, begging for someone to help them. He thought about how the galaxy had ignored their cries, how every species had turned away because getting involved was too dangerous, too costly, too inconvenient. And then these humans had come. 12 ships against 100, a handful of soldiers against an army. They had traveled across the stars not for money or power or territory, but simply because they had heard the screaming in the darkness and refused to look away. "Take me to the surface," ordered, rising on legs that trembled with age and weakness. "I must see this for myself." The journey through the tunnels took hours. His body ached with every step, but he refused to stop, refused to rest. When he finally emerged into the ruins of what had once been a great city, he saw something that changed him forever. In the distance, near the remains of the central hospital, human soldiers were fighting. There were only a handful of them left, wounded and exhausted, their ammunition nearly gone. They had formed a circle around a group of civilians, protecting them with their bodies while enemies attacked from all sides. A human female, her uniform soaked in blood both red and blue, was treating injured children while firing a weapon with her other hand. As watched, a human male with a terrible wound in his side charged 3 soldiers with nothing but a broken piece of metal. He killed 2 of them before the third cut him down. And even as he fell, another human took his place, screaming in a language did not understand but whose meaning was perfectly clear. "We will not stop. We will not yield. We will fight until there is nothing left." Tears formed in his large eyes and rolled down his blue cheeks. He had lived for nearly 200 years. He had seen wonders that most beings could not imagine, but he had never seen anything like this. He had never witnessed such pure, absolute courage. "Why?" he whispered to the smoke-filled sky. "Why would they do this for us? We are nothing to them. We have nothing to offer them. Why would they die for strangers?" The answer came to him not in words, but in understanding. These humans did not fight because of what they might gain. They fought because of who they were. They came from a world where helping the helpless was not weakness but strength, where standing alone against impossible odds was not foolishness but honor. Turned to the who had gathered around him, refugees who had emerged from their hiding places to watch the battle. Their eyes were filled with the same fear and despair that had haunted them for months, but saw something else there now. A tiny spark, waiting to become a flame. "Look at them," he commanded, pointing toward the fighting. "Those aliens crossed the galaxy to help us. They are dying for people they have never met. They have nothing to gain and everything to lose, and still they fight." His voice grew stronger, echoing across the ruins. "For months we have hidden in darkness. We have accepted our death as inevitable. We have told ourselves that we are peaceful, that we do not know how to fight, that resistance is pointless. But look at those humans. They have shown us what courage truly means. Can we do any less?" A young male stepped forward, his face marked with the grief of losing his entire family. "Elder, we are not warriors. We have no weapons, no training. What can we possibly do?" Smiled, a fierce expression that his people had never seen on his gentle face. "We know this world. Every tunnel, every hidden path, every secret way. We know where to store their supplies, where their commanders sleep, where their machines need power. We may not be able to fight them with weapons, but we can blind them. We can slow them. We can make every step they take cost them dearly." He raised his voice so that all could hear. "The humans have given us a gift. They have given us hope. Now we must earn that gift. Now we must show the galaxy that they are not sheep waiting for slaughter. We are people with courage and dignity and the will to survive. Rise up, my children. Rise up and fight alongside our human friends. Let this be the day the galaxy remembers." The spark became a flame. The flame became a fire. Within hours, began emerging from hiding all across Prime. They could not fight directly, but they could sabotage their equipment. They could lead human soldiers through secret passages behind enemy lines. They could shield the wounded and carry supplies, and do 1,000 small things that added up to something enormous. In orbit, something even more remarkable was happening. 3 alien fleets dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They belonged to species that had ignored the pleas for help, species that had declared intervention too risky. But they had been watching the battle through long-range sensors. They had seen 12 human ships challenge an empire. They had watched humans die for strangers. And they had felt something they had not experienced in generations: shame. The commander of the largest fleet opened a channel to Captain's damaged ship. "Human vessel, this is Admiral of the Confederacy. We are here to assist." Laughed, a sound that was half relief and half exhaustion. Her ship was barely functional. Her crew was running on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. But they had done it. They had held long enough for the galaxy to wake up. "Better late than never, Admiral," she replied. "Welcome to the fight." The tide was turning. The long night was finally approaching its end. And on a burning moon, surrounded by enemies, human soldiers and refugees stood together and watched the sky fill with ships coming to save them. 6 days after the battle began, the last warship fled the system. Their mighty invasion fleet had been reduced to a handful of damaged vessels running for safety. On the ground, their armies had surrendered or been destroyed. The empire that had never known defeat, that had conquered a dozen worlds without facing real resistance, had been broken by 12 ships and a few hundred soldiers from a planet most of the galaxy had never heard of. Commander arrived with the second wave of Earthships to find a changed world. The skies above Prime were filled with vessels from a dozen different species, all working together to bring supplies and medical aid to the survivors. The moon was still by war, its beautiful cities reduced to ash, but it was alive. Against all odds, against every logical prediction, the had survived. She found the drifting in orbit, a broken shell that barely qualified as a ship anymore. Its hull was torn open in 100 places. Its engines were dead, but somehow, impossibly, its crew was still alive. Emergency rescue teams had to cut through collapsed corridors to reach the bridge, where Captain had refused to leave her post until every single member of her crew was accounted for. They carried out on a stretcher. She had 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and burns covering most of her left side. The medics said she should have died a dozen times during the battle. When asked her how she had survived, just smiled weakly and said, "I was too angry to die." On the surface, Sergeant Minu stood in the ruins of the hospital he had defended through the longest night of his life. Of the 30 soldiers who had dropped with him, 11 remained. They were gathered around a small fire, sharing food with the refugees they had protected. The children who had been so terrified were now playing with human soldiers, trying to learn words in each other's languages, laughing despite everything they had lost. Elder approached the sergeant with slow, careful steps. In his hands, he carried a staff made of crystal that glowed with soft inner light. It was the staff of mourning, the most sacred object in culture, given only to the greatest heroes in their history. "Sergeant Minu," said, his voice trembling with emotion, "my people have debated for many hours how to thank you. We have nothing of material value to offer. Our cities are destroyed. Our treasures are ash, but we have this." He held out the staff. "This has been passed down through 50 generations of. It represents the best of who we are, our hopes and dreams and belief that goodness exists in the universe. We want you to have it." Minu stared at the beautiful object, then gently pushed it back toward the elder. "Keep it," he said. "Your people will need it more than I do. You have a lot of rebuilding to do." His large eyes blinked in confusion. "But you saved us. You nearly died for us. Why would you refuse such an honor?" Minu was quiet for a long moment, looking at the children playing with his soldiers. Then he looked at the medic, who was still treating wounded despite her own injuries. He thought about the friends he had lost, the soldiers who would never go home, the price that had been paid for this victory. "We didn't come here for honor," he finally said. "We didn't come for rewards or recognition. We came because we heard your people crying for help and we couldn't look away. That's all. That's the only reason." Nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "Your species is very strange, Sergeant. In all my years, I have never encountered beings quite like you." "Yeah," Minyu agreed with a tired smile. "We get that a lot." Far away on Earth, General watched the news reports from his office in Seoul. Every screen showed images from Prime, Captain being carried off her ship, defiant even in defeat. Sergeant Minyu standing guard over refugees, the moment when the fleet finally broke and ran. The galaxy had been watching, too. Species that had considered humans primitive and unimportant were now paying very close attention. The Galactic Council, which had declared the outside intervention parameters, was facing difficult questions about its own failure to act. Representatives from a dozen worlds were requesting diplomatic meetings with Earth's government. But more importantly, something deeper had changed. For centuries, the unwritten law of galactic civilization had been simple: the strong prey upon the weak and everyone else looks away. That law had been challenged before, but never successfully. The strong always won in the end. Until now. 12 ships had proven that it did not have to be that way. A handful of soldiers had shown that courage and determination could overcome any odds. The story of Prime was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire, inspiring species that had accepted oppression for generations, frightening empires that had thought themselves invincible. Came to visit a week after returning to Earth. She found the old general standing at his window, looking out at the lights of Seoul spreading to the horizon. In his hand, he held a piece of metal that had been recovered from the hull, twisted and blackened by fire. "The Council wants to know our intentions," reported. "They're afraid we might try to become conquerors ourselves. They want assurances that humanity won't use our new reputation to build an empire." Laughed softly. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that we're not interested in ruling anyone. We never have been. Koreans spent too many centuries being ruled by others to want that for ourselves or anyone else." The old general nodded, turning the piece of metal over in his hands. "The galaxy has had its rules for a very long time. The strong take what they want. The weak suffer in silence. Everyone else pretends not to notice." He looked at with eyes that still burned with fierce determination. "We just rewrote those rules." He placed the metal fragment on his desk, a reminder of what human courage had accomplished. From now on, when a species cries out for help, they will know that someone might answer. When tyrants plan to destroy the innocent, they will have to wonder if Earth's warriors might appear on the horizon. We cannot save everyone. We cannot fight every battle. But we have shown the galaxy that there is another way. That kindness is not weakness. That standing up for others is not foolishness. Thought about Captain, who was recovering in a military hospital, already asking when she could return to duty. She thought about Sergeant Minyu, who had refused every medal and honor, saying he was just a soldier doing his job. She thought about Medic, who had saved over 100 lives on that burning moon. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked. "All those lives we lost, all that sacrifice, do you think it made a difference?" Smiled the same fierce smile he had shown her on the night this all began. "Ask the children who are alive because our soldiers died to protect them. Ask the species who were inspired by our example to stand up to their own oppressors. Ask the next world that cries for help and finds that someone actually answers." He walked back to the window, looking up at the stars that had once seemed so far away. "We came to the galaxy as newcomers, primitive and unknown. We leave it as something else entirely. Not conquerors, not rulers, but protectors, defenders. The ones who come when no one else will." On Prime, they had begun rebuilding. Their cities would rise again, different but no less beautiful. Their children would grow up knowing that they had not been abandoned, that strangers from a distant world had crossed the stars to save them. And throughout the galaxy, in the courts of empires and the councils of nations, a new understanding was taking hold. The old rules were changing. The strong could no longer prey upon the weak without consequence. Because somewhere out there, beyond the darkness between stars, Earth's warriors were watching, waiting, ready to answer the next cry for help. The galaxy had believed no one would come for they had been wrong, and that mistake had changed everything. The rules had been rewritten, and humanity was holding the pen.